All right. Hey, this is Brian Schutt, owner of HomeSense Heating and Cooling, and I'm with my friend Chris Eley of Goose the Market and Smoking Goose, and we're doing something. And what?
And Oka.
And
Don't
Oka.
forget Oka,
Forgive
the
me.
new one.
Yeah, it's new. How long has that been open?
4 months.
Okay.
Yeah, it's baby.
I've not been there yet,
Yeah,
so that's.
just come check it out.
Oh, I forgot it. Where's that one?
It's at the Sun King's brewery downtown.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we're doing something for the first time. We've been thinking about it for a couple of years. It's called Cool Customers, and what we want to do is highlight friends of ours in the community that are doing cool things. And so Chris, for better or worse, is my first guest on this little vision. And so the hope and sort of the background is we just believe that relationships are what move the world. And hearing the stories of people that are doing fascinating things in our community, we hope that might connect with folks out there and maybe give them energy and enthusiasm to achieve their vision. So my goal is just to have a quick conversation, and we'll be anxious to get some feedback once we do that. But Chris and I, there's a reason why I reached out to him. We've known each other for probably
Over 20 years, yeah.
Yeah, 23 or so years. So we went to Lawrence Central High School together. I first remember Chris. You probably don't remember this.
I don't know if I want to hear this.
No. It's all good. It actually flows well.
Okay.
One of my friends, I don't even remember who it was. It was probably Reisner.
Mm-hmm.
Was going to a dance, and everybody's scrambling. Of course, we're like 15 and don't know like where to eat.
Oh yeah.
I think we picked somewhere like absurd, like was it Illusions, the magic place in Carmel?
Illusions, yeah.
Anyway, ridiculous. But someone was like, yeah, so those three couples Chris is making dinner for them. I was like, what? Who is this guy? It's like, I don't even know like what restaurant to pick, and you're cooking a dinner before prom or something like that. So that was my first sort of awareness of you. We reconnected at Purdue after you did 2 years at Johnson & Wales. Mm-hmm. I also like to hilariously mention that you were in the fraternity with me as the sort of not prototypical fraternity guy, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then...
I still don't know how to describe that.
Yeah. Your fraternity experience?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, that could go down a wormhole. But so that's where I think we got to know each other a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And then obviously both owning businesses here in Indy. So that's kind of the background of the relationship. So I guess where I wanted to start was sort of your, you've seemingly from a young age had a connection to food. What's the background there? How'd you sort of do that?
I think I hate to say it, I think most of it came out of like a sense of survival. I don't know, my parents divorced when I was young. My mom worked a lot. She was great, an awesome supporter. But at a young age, I kind of had to start working. Basically, if I wanted really kind of anything. But I was always kind of motivated to work. I got sucked in, I would say, by the industry. I really enjoyed it. Started washing dishes and just enjoyed it. I enjoyed the camaraderie and mostly fell in love with like the culture of restaurants and working around food before I actually fell in love with food itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I remember too. So I don't know if you remember this. You essentially got me a job at Peter's when we were in college.
Yeah.
And Peter George is kind of a legend in the area. What'd you learn in that experience that you sort of still maybe use to this day?
I take a lot from everywhere I've worked. A lot of the right way to do things, the wrong way to do things, how to motivate people. And he just has a very different style and motivation. He kind of accepts nothing less than perfection.
Right.
It's an interesting, like that pursuit of perfection or pursuit of execution is interesting. It's interesting to watch, people in that path, because a lot of times nothing can stop them, and they're just kind of, they're just kind of like a force to be reckoned with. So I learned a lot from them. I mean, I learned a lot of really positive things. I also learned some things that I, try not to do now.
Yeah. So, I don't know, what's it been since you opened Goose? 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah.
When did that idea, epiphany, or how did that evolve, and then coming back from Chicago?
Yeah. I mean, I always knew that I wanted to run kind of my own operation. I was always kind of the type of person that wanted to lead a group and kind of do it on my terms and that sort of thing. And I also, through the years, I also opened a number of restaurants for a number of people, different companies, and other types of businesses as well. And probably the thing that just drove me nuts the most was just watching essentially investors change concepts and try to manipulate places, and as soon as something wasn't working, they change, and it just caused places to they didn't have a sense of culture, they didn't have a sense of belonging, and really they kind of lost their identity in the process. Right. So I knew that I wanted to do like an owner-operator situation where it was essentially just kind of we ran it and didn't really involve a lot of people. But honestly, I wrote a number of different business plans, because the other thing I saw is I didn't want to open restaurants. I didn't want to personally open a restaurant. So I wrote a number of different business plans before it kind of settled on the market. One thing I always loved about Chicago was just how each neighborhood has its own butcher shop, neighborhood butcher shop, whether it's Ukrainian or whatever village or area that you might be in. Everybody has a different style butcher shop, and I think it's really cool because you can go to all these different shops, find a wide range of variety of meats and cuts and different ingredients that go along with it. So when I looked at coming back to Indianapolis, kind of what I saw that I really thought that I wanted, especially in the urban area, in the urban neighborhood that was developing, was a butcher shop. So that was kind of the goal, was to do our take on it. I mean, little did we know, even at the time, it wasn't necessarily something that was, I guess, trending or taking off. But since then, it definitely has. But yeah, that was kind of what we set out to do originally.
You said that, so you've picked up a lot from a lot of different experiences, and then one of those was sort of the aversion to having investors maybe co-opt or water down a model to chase probably just the business success. How do you marry sort of the pursuit of a vision with the functional reality of overhead and payroll and keeping doors open? How have you sort of walked that tightrope in the last 10 years?
Well, I definitely knew what we were doing. There was really nothing like it in Indianapolis, and I knew if I wanted to stick with the vision, and I was kind of a ride or die. I'm not connected to something so much that I'm gonna ruin my life over it.
Sure.
If I realize it's not gonna work, I'm not dumb enough to think that I'm not gonna force it.
Sure.
But it's you have to be relentless. That was some of the things I have learned from the people I worked for. If you have the vision, you want to see it through. You absolutely have to be relentless to make it happen. There's going to be there's a number of different roadblocks in your way every single day. Sometimes even just getting the store open. There's just every day. There's still roadblocks every day. And if you let those slow you down in any way or stop you, it's. Just the fact that in 10 years I've only had to close the shop one day due to a power outage.
That's insane.
We've gone through losing our HVAC. We've gone through plumbing issues. I've had frozen pipes. You name it. There's only been one day in 10 years I've had to actually close because we've had power for an entire day.
That'll do it.
So that's kind of the relentless attitude. If we want to be a reliable place in the market or in the city, we try to make sure that we're there for people and they expect us to be open.
Would you say that sort of relentless attitude is a part of your maybe philosophy on doing things, or how would you characterize your philosophy of business now that you've been doing it 10 years?
Yeah. The philosophy is, the thing you have to be careful about with that side of relentless is because typically somebody or something pays a price, right? Sure. Something has to break, something has to give. So that part you have to balance that, and you got to be careful because, you got to build the culture and build a relationship with the people and the customers and your suppliers and all these things. So you can't necessarily be so relentless that it's going to put others in harm, or it's going to damage others. But at the end of the day, you're the one responsible for making sure everybody gets paid.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take that responsibility, And, my philosophy has always been I'm the last one to get paid. If we're not making money, or I can't pay our suppliers or our vendors, I can't pay our employees, and we're not getting paid.
Yeah.
I went 5 years at Smoking Goose without taking a paycheck before we actually, I was working, 60 hours a week. So this is the kind of I do it, I do it for the vision of I'm going to do anything I can to make this successful.
Yeah.
I have a responsibility to the employees, I have a responsibility to our suppliers and our customers. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make this successful. And then the investment for me in that, or my return on that, is hopefully to see a successful business with a good reputation.
I want to underscore that point, because I think that's, at least, I hear a lot of people, and there's a fascination with owning your own business. And I think I would say the reality of doing so, and the cost, and the sort of, the hurdles or roadblocks that you put it, I think sometimes get lost in the highlights that get put out there.
Yeah.
And obviously you need the highlights, and you need sort of the tops of the mountaintops to be the motivation, but not taking a salary for 5 years while working 60 hours, I mean, that's incredible. Really, seriously, because that's the sort of thing that is what it takes to actually get to something that's successful. And I think that point gets lost. And
I think people sometimes misinterpret good business, or the fact that you're busy, with success. I mean, personal financial success, and those aren't the two. Those aren't one and the same.
I'm sure you get littered with financial advisor phone calls.
Financial advisor, but also donation. I mean, you get donation requests from these companies. I'm looking at these companies are you kidding me? I mean, you guys have 4 weeks paid vacation. You're by no means, your employees are by no means scraping by.
Right.
And I have, we have 50 employees.
Yeah.
That,
just toss us some free meat. Right. As if there's no fixed cost there.
Yeah, it's crazy. I kind of feel like, man, sometimes I feel like I should be asking you for a donation. But it's I'm sure you guys get a lot too, and I get it. You gotta be involved, and you gotta be a part of the community.
Absolutely.
We work really hard at that, as you guys, as you do.
Absolutely.
But part of that is just staying relevant. You have to be out there, and you got to be part of what's going on.
Yeah.
And if you write yourself off from that, you miss out.
Yeah. So I know you're sort of in the operation, and that necessarily requires sort of a head down a little bit, but I have the intuition that you're not entirely, you can't be motivated entirely if your head's down. So what's your vision for the future for your business, or what do you see happening within the food scene in Indianapolis that, 5 years from now you expect, differences to have taken shape, and where do you look to sort of find that inspiration? Yeah. About 10 questions in there.
No, I mean, it's something I struggle with all the time. If I always kind of use a analogy, you can't drive the train if you're shoveling the coal all day. So it's what I really want to be doing is shoveling coal. What I really want to be doing is just 100% of my time butchering and making new products and testing this, that, and that. But I'm tasked with, fortunately and unfortunately, I'm also tasked with teaching other people, passing on the trade, also relying on people, depending on them, and believing in them. Not always easy, but in order to keep everything moving, again, at the end of the day, my responsibility is to keep the business going and to keep the reputation positive, and to keep everybody's jobs, and keep suppliers and everything, farms and all these things going. So when you have that responsibility, it's irresponsible of me to hide and butcher all day, even if that's what I personally want to be doing. So again, I kind of have to put my own personal wants and desires aside in order to operate and run a business that other people can rely on. I have dreams of just running a business where it's essentially just me, and I can do everything, run a little shop on a country road where it's one of those drive-ins, and you just it's pay whatever you think it's worth. Yeah, exactly. I love it. Pay whatever you think it's worth, and that's it. Just do it all, but that's never. It's not going to happen.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe with retirement that would happen.
Oh, man, you'd kill it.
But I struggle with this now, especially as we continue to grow. I've always had the philosophy that if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. You can't really just stay the same.
Yeah.
So if we had stayed the same, 10 years in the market, we would have been long forgotten by now.
Sure.
We kind of have to, in a way, reinvent ourselves every year. whether it's a capital expenditure that we put back into the market, or whether it's a new program, or we do catering now. So that was something we didn't do for 9 years, and we started doing that last year.
Nice.
So we're always like looking for something new to add or new to do every year. But the philosophy when you have that philosophy and you're kind of constantly trying to get better, but you're also trying to operate essentially right now 3 small businesses.
Right.
You're basically kind of like chasing the flash all the time. What's the most important thing where's my attention needed right now? It's over here.
Where's the fire to put out today?
Yeah, when you focus too much attention in one area, then you turn around and the next thing is not new. So I struggle with this.
The whack-a-mole reality.
Yeah, the whack-a-mole reality. I don't have right now. I mean, we're not really at a stage where we have enough like top line managers. I mean, our managers are like in the trenches working every day. And sometimes it's hard to see the bigger overall vision of things. When you're you're the only one doing it. You don't have a lot of other people doing it, and you're running 3 companies.
When you're looking for managers, what's the top of your list? Or I guess like if there are people watching, they're like, I love what Chris is saying. I mean, like when you're trying to find a good fit, what's top of mind for you, or what's most important?
It changes. I mean, it changes with what the business needs. At different times, the businesses need different things. There's been times where we have had poor employee morale. We needed to build a better sense of team in certain areas. So I've looked for people that were like, just basically coaches or like cheerleaders.
Yeah, sure.
I've looked for people at times that, a lot of times finding someone that can do all these things is difficult. We were in an environment where we do retail, we do business-to-business wholesale, we do food manufacturing, we're under federal inspection, but we also do retail food production. So there's a lot of different skill sets in there, and they're not one and the same. So finding someone that, maybe is a really strong butcher, but is a poor leader or poor manager, or vice versa. You have a great leader, but they don't know anything about food. So there's all these different things you kind of have to weigh and balance out. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I think what probably matters most to me is people that, one, really believe in what we're doing, have a passion for it. I mean, you can't survive in this business. Nobody goes into this business to get rich. You're not going to retire at 40 in this business. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that do, but very, very rarely does that ever happen. So, I mean, you really have to love it. And
I imagine the people that could are the ones that are pursuing something so innovative and that's so passion-driven that they wouldn't even want to. Think about like, and this is a segue, because I know you've been and spent some time in New York City. You were out there for like James Beard. You cooked at
the James Beard house.
Okay, that's awesome, man. I just think about like David Chang and the stuff that he's doing there. It's like, I mean, he just is constantly pushing the envelope. So, not to say that that's where all innovation comes from, but like
But he's got to have really good people in his storefronts. I mean, in his restaurants. I mean, if he doesn't have that team built, it's going to fall apart when he's off. I mean,
if he's looking at the stars,
right? And he does. He's got great vision. But I also think that's why he attracts really good people.
Absolutely. Well, I would say the same about you. And I back to the sort of what you see 5 years down the line. Maybe it's not for Goose, but if you were to sort of predict where's the Indy food scene going, what jumps to your mind?
Well, I do think we're at a turning point with the difference between retail, how people shop on a retail level from a big box standpoint versus home delivery. I mean, we're at a huge turning point for that across the country. I mean, so many people are looking for the convenience, but they're losing the interpersonal relationships that they gain from shopping.
Definitely.
I mean, shopping is just the act of shopping, going out, seeing people, meeting people. I mean, one reason I do think breweries have been so successful because they're creating these social environments that people can hopefully. I mean, some of them you can bring your kids or you can bring your dogs, and you come and. You can meet people from the neighborhood. If you move into a neighborhood and all the retail's closed, how are you going to meet neighbors? Like, where's the common,
Absolutely.
Just the hangout spot?
I heard this anecdote that when Howard Schultz was scaling Starbucks, part of the notion was we've lost the front porch, and that's part of what he wanted to create. And obviously, there's cost benefit to people's perspective
Yeah.
on Starbucks, but
We
with
do.
mass scale.
Right.
But I think you see that sense of community there in some coffee shops, and
Yeah.
I agree with you in breweries. So
Yeah, I mean, people reflect back on time and stuff like that where television, when the television sets came in,
Sure.
that people didn't go outside as much. They weren't out like on their porches
Yeah.
as much. They weren't communicating with each other. The same thing when the internet, when that took hold, it changes the way that people communicate with each other. And now with the online and the home delivery, I mean, this is going to be a point in time where we look back 10 years from now and say, wow, that really changed the way we shop, not just the way we shop, but it's
Yeah.
far more than that. It's the way we consume, the way we decide on what we're going to buy, but also the way we communicate with each other, and just like the culture being able to sit down and like have a conversation with
Right.
somebody. You're starting to lose that more and more. But I also think people are craving it more and more. I mean, it's
Yeah.
great for introverts. I mean,
Sure.
introverts love this. I mean, it's like, dude, if I don't have to talk to anybody, I don't got to see anybody, just stay inside, I can do
Yeah.
everything. That's perfect. But I shouldn't say most, but a
Yeah.
lot of humans aren't wired that way.
Sure.
I mean, they're wired. They want to be in.
well, I would say even introverts want depth of relationship. I know, but like,
there's just a time. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm an introvert. I just want to go in the woods and not see anybody for
And
3
chop
days.
meat.
Yeah, but I do think that the shopping experience. So how that kind of what goes back to the question is what I think that's going to change. Actually, I think in my theory is it's going to kind of push these well-curated shops back into the market. Stuff that you just cannot find on the internet, that you want to talk to somebody, you want to have a conversation to them, you want to know how to cook it, you want to know how to do all these things. I mean, you're going to be able to get a steak via your mailbox. You already can. I mean, you have been for years. But what you're missing is that question and answer relationship with a butcher like Kevin at our shop. But, it's going to grow to other places and other forms, whether it's a leather maker, somebody who throws pottery, or someone, I think that we'll see more and more of these shops that are like, people feel like they're well curated and they're willing to spend, it might not be the bottom dollar, but they're willing to spend it for quality.
That's cool. Yeah. I agree. So if you were a young sort of up-and-comer in the Indy food scene, where would you be looking to try to innovate? Like, what sort of town, what sort of shop, what sort of thing would you be fired up about? Let's say put all of Goose the Market on hold, everything you've done, and you're 25. What would you be pursuing?
I still think, you have to do something that nobody else is doing, especially in a somewhat small city like this. I think you do have to take a risk, and I would be more apt to do something like that. But it's not necessarily like creating something entirely new, but it is like taking a risk, not at the point where it's already gone 3 years through New York and 3 years through Chicago and San Francisco, and whether it's I don't want to name anything, because I'm sure there's people here doing things, but it's already kind of
for sure done somewhere,
run its course in for 3 to 6. I mean, because kind of what happens, something happens in New York, Chicago, or LA, or San Francisco, and then it kind of like spreads out to the rest. Well, if you wait for that spread to happen, you're kind of like picking up on the end of, you're only going to basically clean up what's left of it. Rather than like taking that risk at the same time that something is, let's say, opening in New York. But I mean, a lot of that part is just paying attention to what people want and what people need. For me to say like what I specifically would do right now, it's tough. I think you got to know what you're really good at. I myself, if I want to do something, I'm going to spend a lot of time researching it. I'm going to spend a lot of time like learning how to do it. I'm going to spend a lot of time like making sure that I try to be like I'm trying to pursue like be one of the best. So it'd be hard for me to say, I just want to start doing it. I want to start doing this now.
All right, so final question, just because I know you're in the know. What's like one place that I need to go that I probably am not aware of to get a meal in town?
Oh man,
that you're fired up about right now?
Oh, I always love Rook. Okay. I don't know. I love it. I'd say Rook for sure.
What'd you get there?
Well, he changes it so much. It's hard to say. I can't tell you. I mean, you can't go wrong. Have you been there?
No.
You've been there? I should check it out for sure. Let's see. We had a great meal at Yukio just recently. That's a fairly new spot for sure, and people are hearing about it. I was trying to think of maybe more something that
off the beaten path or something
that's kind of been around a little bit. Though I mean, like Rook, I just don't think they get enough recognition for what he does there.
That's good to know.
I just think that he does. He gets good recognition. Don't get me wrong, but I just feel like he's one of the best chefs in the city. And
Awesome.
I mean, he's like just one of the best places in the city. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's. I'm always a fan of Mama's Korean on Penn on Pike, and I usually try to go there very often. But that's kind of. I think a lot of people wear
Mama's Korean.
Korean,
okay,
yeah, Korean barbecue. They've been around for a long time.
That's
And
great.
They've had some stories, but she's just. The Winkies were always
really,
big fans. Of
so it has been around for a while.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so they love Brian and Corey love that place.
That's good.
I think they might have been the ones that actually turned me on to it 20 years ago. When we were in high school. Mama's has probably been there for 30 years.
That's on my list then. All right, cool. Well, hey, so this was our first shot at this. Hopefully you found it interesting. I certainly did. And if you have any follow-up questions for Chris, just shoot them our way. And thank you for watching. And hopefully a few of you watched. And we're going to try to do this again. Thanks a lot.